Hey everyone, and welcome to the Charity Charge Show. My name is Matt,
This is Grayson.
and today we're joined by Donna Yari. Donna, thank you for being with us today. Of
Thank you very much for having me, gentlemen.
course, and you are the emergency response team lead for the Monday.com Foundation.
Yep, that's correct.
We're excited to learn about your work with the foundation and learn a little bit more about the mission. But before we dive into that, just curious to know, a little bit about your background and what set you on this path to the work that you're doing right now in the nonprofit sector.
Yeah, absolutely. My path is a little bit unconventional. I really started everything almost 20 years ago in investment banking. I spent 10 years on Wall Street and then in other kind of firms around the world. And then I realized that I want to do something else. I want to do something that's high intensity as well, but much more impactful. And I joined an aid organization. I started working in different kind of disaster zones around the world, in South Sudan and in Dominica and in Haiti. And then I really found the passion there, but I wanted to make, the work that we're doing just better, more efficient. I really saw the gap there, and that's what led me really to where I am today, to Monday.
That's amazing. Well, tell us a little more about that role you have at Monday. It sounds to me from the kind of research we did that you come in during emergencies and help support the people on the ground that are making the impact, solving the problems, and y'all kind of support them with the systems that Monday.com creates.
Right, right. So really what we do is, and just starting with the mission is really we try to scale the impact of the disaster response space. So yes, it's definitely helping aid organizations and first responders to operate kind of faster and more efficient. And we definitely do it during the disaster. So we'll come to the field, we'll work with any aid organization that needs support, and we'll build really, really quick kind of digital tools for them to just be able to work faster, to get to more people, to be more organized, to have more collaboration, to know what's actually happening in real time in the field. And that's a big part of what we do. And we also help organizations in the preparedness phase. So we're kind of big believers, especially coming from the humanitarian space, that building capacity of the teams is key. And Monday, thankfully, is a very, very kind of easy to use tool, and it's super flexible, and everyone can use it. But the fact that teams already started using it ahead of time and already incorporated the work with the platform helps them a lot in the field.
That training and that practice and using the tool every single day. And then whenever the emergency strikes, that kind of allows the team to be as efficient as possible.
Right, exactly. And the ERT, as a part of the philanthropic foundation, we provide the services completely pro bono. So it's not just, giving the tools and giving the platforms, but it's really building the capacity and working with the organization side by side throughout the cycle. And, definitely during the response and being there in the field with them, but also starting the relationship and the partnership ahead of time.
Amazing. Question for you, Donna. What would you say success looks like in your work? Is it speed, coordination, lives impacted, or something else?
First of all, yes, it's all of the above, right? Yes, it's speed, it's coordinations, it's lives impacted, it's amount of aid that was delivered in what, capacity of time, it's collaboration between other teams. But really, I think the most impactful kind of measurement for us is capacity. I mean, knowing that the teams and the people that at the end of the day are facing the disasters and facing the rebuild and the reconstruction, they really have the tools and what they need to just make their lives easier. I remember when I was still working in the space, as a field worker, as a first responder, one of the most difficult things for me was to understand what's going on, to get real-time data, to know where to go and what to do and what to deliver. And I think building those capacities of those teams, that's for us success, knowing that they're coming to the response fully equipped.
It's amazing. I do want to dive a little bit in, explain the product itself and kind of the tools that you explain the tool itself that you are equipping the teams to handle. I think that'll help with the rest of the conversation for the listeners.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So Monday.com, the platform, it's basically a tool for collaborative work management, be it, different projects around, if we look at regular businesses around inventory or HR or finance or CRMs or responding to tickets or whatnot. And the beauty of Monday is that it's built like Lego pieces. It's really, really smart people created a bunch of Lego pieces that someone like us, the regular people, can just put together and create any tool and any workflow they need. So, what we normally see in disasters is aid organizations needing to do a needs assessment. So imagine, a simple form, everyone has them on their tablet, on their phone, online or offline. People quickly kind of respond to different questions depending on the situation. Information automatically flows into a dashboard. And then a person in the field or in HQ or wherever can see what's actually happening in the different communities in real time. Or, another really common tool that organizations like to develop is managing the aid. So understanding, it's not enough to just understand what people need, but now let's start delivering, different aid items to different shelters or different communities or different households and understand what's going where and what do we need and, things like that. Anything around volunteer coordination. So you have loads of people usually signing up the first few days of disasters to help different, organizations. And now you need to, first of all, do the intake, validate them, have a quick system for them, manage them, assign tasks, assign shifts, knowing who's in charge of what and what skills they have, and maybe connecting them with different tasks in the field. So these are things we definitely see in every disaster. And then, of course, there are so many other things that we'll see, like, I don't know, organizations managing laundry for people or managing reconstruction of houses or mapping out beneficiaries or certain populations to check for vulnerabilities. So anything you can imagine, really, all the way from starting the collection of the data to managing a full workflow, automating it, and then viewing everything in kind of actionable dashboards.
That really hits close to home for us.
Mm.
We're here in Austin, Texas, and we recently had the crazy Independence Day flooding. I don't know if your team was doing much work out there, but I know that it was needed because the governor was in the media saying like, "Hey, there's too many people coming to help. We can't intake all these people. It's making it to where we're not able to keep track of people and the volunteers that are coming out that are really eager to dive in without that system to capture all of that and make sure there's the processes in place to safely track it, make sure the right people are going to the right places. I can imagine in a disaster scenario that it's almost impossible to keep track of, especially whenever there's so much desire to help from the community.
I think Texas is a great example of where you have, especially in the first few days, there was so much information and no place where it was really gathered. And we supported several aid organizations, still, ongoing with their specific work. So one organization was in charge of delivering food kits to families and hot meals, and they created a full system to coordinate that, to understand who needs what and how much we still have in inventory and how much we need to prepare. So really, the full workflow around that. Another organization was managing sheltering for different people. So we helped them to kind of build a system for that as well. And I think the beauty of, especially what we saw in Texas was that so many organizations that were already using the platform and the tools we built with them from different disasters, from previous disasters, were able to immediately start operating minute one. So it's definitely something we definitely saw the need, like you're saying, in terms of the chaos and the need for coordination. And we definitely saw the impact of how time was saved and people were able to reach those in need.
Amazing. On that note, as you help, organizations in previous disasters and you get them set up with a system, do you often see that they then continue to use that system and they're more prepared in the future? That was just a really interesting point that you brought up there.
Yeah, I think so. I think one great example, for example, is the Red Cross National Society in Argentina. We started working with them back in 2022, I want to say, around managing their whole inventory hub for all the Southern Cone humanitarian aid deliveries. And we created a full system for them and we onboarded them and we trained them. And they really started adopting the system. And since then, they've been kind of using it again and again, the inventory system itself for every disaster and for every kind of request from the field for aid. But also, even, really recently, there were massive floods in Argentina, and they reached out to us and said, listen, we want to expand the usage, and we have now teams in the field, and will you be able to come and support us as well doing that? And of course, we came, and of course, we built very, very quick kind of solutions. And the fact that they already were using, the platform for their disaster response at large, I think really made it easy for them to start immediately in the field.
Really appreciated your point, Dana, that that there just needs to be some order and organization to you know the fallout of disaster, just because it's so chaotic. And to Grayson's point, when the floods during Independence Day happened, there was just too much help and too much disorganization going on that kind of added to that chaos. So we really appreciate what your organization does. How do you balance urgency? You know, uh, with the long-term building when disaster strikes. Obviously, you're rushing to aid, but then building a system that maybe prevents that from happening again in the future.
Right. I think first of all, you have to, it's like you have to look at what's really, really impactful right now. So if we're now in the field and now, for example, in the floods in Texas, now there's people that need to be, rescued, or we need to take inventory and who's still missing. This is the most urgent need that you need to do now. And then, after that, you need to start understanding who needs shelter, who needs food. You need to do a needs assessment, and then you need to start delivering the aid. And we really try to focus, especially in the first few days of a disaster, on those workflows that the organizations are now really in need of. That 20% of the work through a digital, workflow can save them 80% of the time of what they're doing. And that's what we really try to focus on. When we go towards longer term kind of support of these organizations, the beauty, again, of the platform is that it's super easy and intuitive. And what we find is that organizations just expand. It's so flexible and it's so dynamic that once they have a process going, they just keep expanding and building more on top of it and through it with more automations, and especially now with all the AI kind of capabilities, that makes everything really seamless. And I think that's how we try to approach it. We don't want to take any organization and build them a full system, but rather we want them to be able to build a system and have the capacities to continue adapting it. And that's how we kind of try to balance the short term immediate response to long term kind of adoption and further usage in other crises.
Know that you also have this kind of wealth of experience being a team lead yourself. In your time working in the kind of emergency response field, how have you seen it kind of change over time? And also, as you stepped into this role at Monday.com, what perspective shifts has that given you?
Yeah, I think I've definitely seen the shift, and I'm seeing it, and I'm seeing it all the time. But when I look back at my role, back in 2018, 2019, even all the way through 2021, working in the field through complete chaos, trying to kind of manage disasters with emails and maybe an Excel spreadsheet, and WhatsApp if we're lucky. Disaster,
Yeah.
a disaster on top of a disaster, really. It's just challenging, like you're in a really stressful situation and you are already on the verge of being burnt out, and there's so much need and you feel like you can do more, and shifting, I think, through the years, the disaster sector, the humanitarian sector, is really starting to understand that digital transformation, it's not a nice to have. It's something that needs to be there. If you're in the business of saving lives, you need to work like for-profit businesses and be efficient, because that's the name of the game. And especially when I see now, and we all see that so many resources are being diminished. There's less money, there's less funding, there's less countries involved in aid. The more efficiency is needed. And it's definitely something that I've seen, moving from, directly from the field to leading the ERT at Monday Foundation, and also with us. We have, for example, a tech group of other tech companies that we meet every month, and they all kind of work around the humanitarian sector. And every month, or every like quarter, we have more and more new joiners and more tech companies that are getting into supporting NGOs or disaster responders. And I think that's really, really meaningful to see the collaboration between tech and digital tools and humanitarian response.
I loved what you said about in times where it's kind of there's this uncertainty, there's these funding cuts. It's like it's that almost the optimistic side of it. It's like, okay, well, what do we have control over? We can make stuff more efficient. We can use our time better. It's like, that's the limited resource that we're competing with. So I really love that kind of idea that y'all are enabling these organizations to be more efficient.
Yeah, I mean they're the ones doing amazing work, and we always say they're the heroes. They're doing just brilliant, amazing, impossible work in some areas. We're just there to help them do it faster, to help them save time, save on people, save money, so they can do more, so they can really like focus on what it is that they're there to do.
No, that speaks really closely to our mission as well at Charity Charge as well. Kind of the foundation of our company was kind of Stephen through his connections with the nonprofit space really realized that they were underserved by the financial community, and that is really where kind of we kind of developed some tools for them with our credit card and some other programs to allow them to have access to the same kind of business tools that we see all small businesses have access to.
Hmm.
So we completely understand, and that's really at the heart of our mission as well. So we are completely on board with it.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's always a balance between the mission itself and the back office administration, and one can definitely slow the other.
Right.
So,
100%.
trying to find ways to make things efficient for organizations to focus on that mission is always our goal.
Yeah.
Um,
Very, very glad to hear this.
yeah. Um, well, a question again for you: did you always know that you wanted to be in this line of work? Is this something that you diverted from a different path, or how long did you want to be in this type of work?
I think first of all, no, I definitely never, it's not something I knew, and I started like on a completely different course. And at some point when I knew I wanted to do something different, I didn't know yet what it is, what it was. It was back in 2017,
Mhm.
2016. And I just started doing things that interest me. I took some time off to just do things that really interest me and really I felt made an impact. And everything was around community work and humanitarian work and kind of helping in situations that are more difficult, to handle for the normal person. And I think that's what really led me to this. I got a great opportunity to work in South Sudan and kind of transfer my project management and program management skills into something that's really helping people on the ground. And I took it. And ever since, it was just, it just made sense.
That's wonderful. Yeah, we do talk a lot about personal values being mission aligned, and when you really take time to evaluate your own personal values, you often find yourself in a line of work, hopefully that matches those. And it sounds like that's the case for you, which is wonderful. Do you find that? I guess my question is when it comes to working with a team, either your board or your staff, coworkers, how do you ensure that everyone's mission aligned when it comes to your mission?
Come interview with us. It's really evident from the first second of the interview. We're looking for people that want to change things and care about technology and care about the humanitarian sector and understand the need for combining this.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I am happy to say that we're doing a pretty good job at finding the right people that have their hearts in the right place.
To kind of piggyback off his question, I want to kind of talk a little bit about communication, both internally, like with your team in the kind of emergency situations, talking with the nonprofits, that line of communication, but then also enabling easy and open communications on the ground during these situations, and maybe how your tool enables that.
So our team, all of our work honestly is managed on Monday. And this is our way of communication. That and of course Slack, but all of our work, and I think that's the beauty of it, and that's what we try to have other organizations do as well. We want them to have the communication per specific task or specific action item or specific inventory line. It doesn't help for me when I'll ask the team, hey, how's the project in South Sudan is going, or how is the project in Ethiopia? But rather, if I ask them specifically on the item line, Ethiopia, hey, tagging my team member, how is this going? Do you need any help? And maybe automating the response also. If everything is all right, they can just automate, a response or whatnot. And the same goes in the disaster situation. Yes, we see a lot of the communication still needs to be, of course, in WhatsApp and phone calls and whatnot, or sat phones, depending on the situation. But when you're actually talking about specific things, it makes so much more sense to just manage it in one place that's collaborative and everyone can see, and the records stay forever and there's full accountability. And this is what we really try to promote. And we see it, like we really see it on the ground. We measure how many updates, how many conversations people are having in that manner. And we see engagement. And I think that's brilliant.
Something else I can jump in. We have a lot of nonprofit leaders that are listening and that maybe are not a part of emergency response
Right.
situations.
Yeah.
Their mission may be just as important, but it's not at that kind of scale.
Hmm.
What maybe lessons have you learned from your work that you think would be applicable to any nonprofit leader in terms of running their organization?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. It's a great point that there are so many nonprofits out there that are doing super meaningful work around education and health and food and children and women and everything. And they do need, in my view, tools as well to manage everything they do. And we don't just have, if I'm looking just at this specific tool, at project management, at CRM, at grant management, things like that, I would really suggest them to, join the Monday for Nonprofits plan. So, kind of same concept, helping nonprofits at large with the platform. So, you get the seats, you get the platform, and then you can start operating anything you need. And I think that's something that's, again, we kind of talked about it before, but if you're looking at nonprofits or the aid sector, it doesn't matter the size, the fact that they're operating like a nonprofit and they need to operate like a for profit, they need to be efficient, they need to have speed, they need to have organization. That's a basic, I think. And I think the most important step is really to get them there, to give them those tools and whatever they need, like you guys are doing, like empowering them with the financial surrounding that an
Mhm.
SMB would get, or even a big business would get. That's what you're doing, and that's what I think these organizations really need.
We talk about that all the time where it's like there's this kind of misconception in the general population that a nonprofit means like you aren't making money. And that's not at all what it means. It just means that the money that you are bringing in is hopefully going to whatever mission it is that you're working on. And it's not going to the shareholder, but you're still a profitable entity. And in terms of bringing in more than you are, spending. So we talk about that all the time.
Yeah, yeah, and you still have, I mean, I think the beautiful thing about them is they don't have to report back to investors or to shareholders, but rather they have to, at the end of the day, report back to the people that they're supporting.
Yeah, and their
Um,
bylaws, which of course is for structuring that. Yeah, and that's the great part about it is that every single dollar that comes in should ideally be going towards the mission.
right.
You mentioned the general nonprofit platform for Monday.com. Is that also kind of a waived fee program as well, or
Yes.
how does that look as well for nonprofits?
Yeah, Monday for Nonprofits. You can go to the website, of course, and check it out. It's all very transparent. Um, the plan is for every eligible nonprofit, and you get 10 free seats, which usually for most nonprofits, I think that's a pretty good start because what we've learned is most of them are not that big. And beyond that, you get a 70% discount for each additional seat or person using the platform. And they get a full resource center and all the tools and kind of pre-made templates for things that, we've seen come a lot. And there's webinars and there's a lot of kind of additional support that comes with it. So it's definitely a program that I really, really recommend
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that resource.
happily.
We like to, keep on track of, what organizations are actively doing now and what they've done in the past. What's coming up in the future for your organization that you're excited about, or any new any new endeavors?
Listen, with disasters, we're all gonna have to just hope for the best, no disasters, and then respond as we go. But if I'm looking at what we're doing, I think one of the key things we started this year, and I'm really passionate about, and I'm passionate to see how it expands, is really localizing what we do. And what we've seen is, we come with a team from, from different places to different countries, and we really realized that localizing the approach could be really meaningful. And we started a program in a few specific countries to really pilot it out and to see how it feels like when we hire kind of local consultants that are humanitarian experts and they know the playing field in their country to start, working with us. So getting to organizations ahead of the disaster, really getting them onboarded on the platform with the relevant tools they need to respond, going with them to the field whenever there's a need. And so far, looking at this program and the concept of localization is really, really impactful because I think if we really want to scale this, and we want to get to every country or every disaster, every organization, we need to have the ability to scale. And I think the way to do it is through localizing the approach. It's their language, their trust, their people, their colleagues. And I think that goes a long way.
I assume that that's a big push in terms of hoping that adoption, in terms of them keeping on with it and maintaining it over a period of time, because you are not able to be there every single day. So making sure that they are invested in the system. What are kind of the differences that you're seeing within that localization process in terms of like getting that buy-in from that local community that's on the ground?
I think the key thing that we're seeing is really the preparedness mode. If we work when our ambassadors, where our consultants are on the ground working with these organizations daily, they get to build with them all the stuff they need, all the tools they need for disaster ahead of time. And then the people already start adopting it and they start, kind of playing around with it and using it. And then they see the benefit. And it's really, really easy. I mean, the tool itself, it's easier than Excel. So it's not a
It's very
rocket
plug and
science.
play,
Yeah, it's
right?
very plug and play. It's very easy, and I think that's something huge that we see from this, from the program. A lot more organizations are coming to us now. For example, in the Philippines or in Mexico, and are curious about it, and they want to start kind of testing out those tools before the next typhoon or the flood or the volcano eruption. And I think that that's a success. It goes back, I think, to the question you brought up before of how does success look like, and I think this is key.
What is one thing just in the general population that you feel like is maybe misunderstood about your work and then just the overall kind of disaster relief work in general?
I don't know. I think there's a lot of things that are misunderstood about the space, all the way from where the funding comes from to where the funding goes to. But if I look specifically into the technological aspect of it, I think one misconception is still technology is nice to have. It'll be great if we can one day have the time to implement technological tools, whatever they may be. And I think this is a misconception that is already starting to change and needs to really have a full gravitational flow of this. I mean, it's a must have, and we've seen it and we see it, and I think that's the one thing I'd love to see really changing, that more organizations, more donors will understand, listen, you need to have tools, whatever they may be. It really doesn't matter, but all, everything around you, just like a regular for-profit company has, in order to work, and do the best job you can.
I know that you did some work with the California wildfires, and I know you mentioned this kind of this misunderstanding, maybe where the money is coming in from and where it's going. When you were doing that work, where did you kind of see your systems kind of come into place? And I know there was a very big influx of donations during that time as well. Did you see any like kind of where was that money going, and kind of did your tool help kind of have easier transparency around that? Maybe there's something you can jump in on that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. In the LA wildfires, we came with a team to the ground pretty, like just a couple of days after the fires really started. And we started working with different organizations. We worked with about 9 or 10 different local initiatives and also big INGOs, all the way from distributing aid. Like we had a couple of big aid organizations we were supporting that were really managing all the aid that came in and then delivering it to different shelters. and everything is fully transparent and everything is fully, like on their platform accountable, and they can use it afterwards for reports to donors and to see what came in, what went where, what was the impact. And on the other side of it, we also helped several community-based organizations, so kind of small initiatives that sprung up to help their local communities and the people
Mm.
around them. So one group of people kind of set up a shelter, and they were able to do the full process all the way from registration of volunteers to registration of appealed people that needed shelter to registration of vendors that were there to donate to people that donated money, and everything had full accountability in terms of dates and quantities and people and what went where, and who slept in which bed, how many nights, and what did they receive. And I think that was really, really beautiful for them to really be able to see, in one dashboard, the impact that they're doing and what are still the gaps and to solve them immediately. And I think that's also a big thing about, using technology. It's not like, if we're looking at a work management platform, it's really collaborative and everyone can see
Mm.
it and there's full transparency and accountability that stays with you. And it's really, really important for donors. We see it more and more. They're talking about this. Where's the money going? What's happening? Where's the impact being made? And the fact that you can see kind of real time impact reports goes a long way.
You already answered my next question. I was going to say, I'm sure from the kind of donor perspective, how empowering it is to see like this is where my dollars went. I allowed my community to sleep safely for
Right.
a week, and we talked a lot on the podcast about just kind of fundraising in general. And I'm sure being able to share that information with your donor base and just the overall community across the world really encourages people to bring money in because it's like you can show that the results from those donations.
Yeah, I can say from the ERT perspective, our focus really is on kind of disaster response core operations. But once the organizations already have the platform and they're already, working with it kind of fluently, they eventually do create all these tools, for exactly for that, for how to better fundraise and how to show the data and how to do real kind of impact reports that are real time, in order to bring in more capital and more resources at the end of the day.
Well, yeah. Then let's talk about the folks that you do interact with and work with. How do you train or onboard people in these emergency settings who might be unfamiliar with the digital tools that you offer? Is there any training involved there?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think, again, the benefit of this, of Monday specifically, is it's so user friendly. It's really intuitive. I mean, the
Mhm.
minute you open it, it's easy, it's colorful, everything is simple, both to build, if you need to build or extend something,
Mhm.
but really to operate. So when we're looking into training, it's a really, really easy process. I mean, the more heavy lifting that we need to do is really understanding what's the workflow, kind of translating humanitarian aid into, digital workflow and then building it. That also it takes, minutes to hours. So it's also not a big deal in terms of those kind of simple workflows, but then the training just happens. So, we'll sit
Yeah,
with them, with the team, we'll have a couple of champions, we'll train them and they will train everyone else, but just the adoption is immediate. You'll see 70-year-olds and 15-year-olds using it instantaneously.
sure. You likened it to Legos at the beginning of this conversation, and anybody likes Legos
Yeah,
and
and they're
can
Yeah,
fun.
and user
exactly,
friendly,
exactly.
intuitive.
They are, but it really is, like
Yeah.
you'll decide what it is you wanna see, how you
Mhm.
wanna see it, how you wanna automate it. If something happens, then I want something else to happen,
Yeah,
and then just a visualization, and everything just kinda flows really, really easily.
It's
and I'm sure that
incredible.
really builds excitement too, and kind of gets them on board with it as well.
Yeah, yeah, and even now, I mean, we just kinda, featured this month, a bunch of new AI capabilities, and now I'm even amazed, like, I write a prompt, I want a board or I want a process that does, will do X, Y, and Z for me, and it's just created, so there's no even even the Lego parts that I love,
Mhm.
or you don't even need those, you can just prompt it out, so
Yeah.
really
Sure.
brilliant.
We've kind of talked about the overall benefits of kind of the emergency response prep work and kind of the efficiency that come from it. I was wondering, is there any specific examples where you can point to that are like the ERT team and the Monday.com infrastructure enabled a specific solution during an emergency response that you don't think would have been possible without your work?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, nothing is not impossible
Mhm.
without our work. I have to say that they're doing the amazing work. We're just making it faster. I remember a lot of cases. I mean, if I look at, I was sitting with a team in Florida during a hurricane response, and we set up like this operation center in the car with our laptops. And they had volunteers going from house to house and kind of collecting data in real time. And we got all the answers in real time in the car, understanding what people actually need. And, the leaders of the NGO were able to immediately call their donors, their HQ and their donors and say, this is what we need. Can we get X, Y, and Z so we can buy all that equipment, and send it over to these communities? And of course, like they got it immediately. So that was a real rapid response. And I saw a very similar thing also in an earthquake I responded to in Morocco. There were hundreds of villages in remote places that were really affected. And it was really hard to reach them and get there every day and understand what's the situation, what's going on. And through kind of really simple forms, the organizations that we supported were able to create this massive needs assessment of the entire kind of area and the entire region to understand what's happening in real time in all these remote locations. So I think these are great examples of what can happen when you have real time information from what's happening in the field and a collaboration of many different kind of bodies and people and stakeholders involved.
Yeah, you'd mentioned, you're doing a lot of work with tech teams, but also humanitarian teams, under the same umbrella. Are there ever misunderstandings between the two? And if so, how do you help them bridge that gap and speak the same language and work together?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and that's really what our team is about. I mean, we kind of translate disaster response lingo to tech lingo or to Monday, spec specifically. You know how if you look at every industry and every company, they each have their own terminologies that no one can understand except if you've been in the field and all the acronyms and all those stuff, and if I look at the tech sector, they have their acronyms. And I look at the humanitarian sector, they have their acronyms. And a lot of what we do, our team is really to do the translation. Okay, this is what you're saying you need. Here's how it would look like in a real workflow, and then once we understand the workflow, talking to the tech team, okay, this is how this should look like from a digital platform perspective.
Is that
And yeah,
localization as well playing a big part in that in terms of like y'all's future thoughts and where it's kind of going in terms of that communication?
yeah, it's huge. I remember up to a year ago, we would go to different disaster zones with, if we didn't have the local capacity, like the language capacity, we would bring a translator or people from Monday that speak the language. But now, working in the Philippines, for example, having somebody who is from the Philippines and worked there for so many years, it makes such a huge difference. Just even the language barrier opens a lot of doors for these, aid organizations in the country. We're not like this American company or whatnot, coming from abroad, but rather, hey, it's my colleague now that I've been working with for 20 years and she gets it and she can explain it to me and it's super helpful.
Well, I think that wraps up a lot of our questions for our kind of audience out there listening. What would be your main ask for them? How can they get involved with your line of work? If they're a nonprofit organization, it sounds like they can reach out to Monday.com and maybe get set up with the free system. Yeah. What's your
Yeah, I think
takeaways?
for sure, first of all, if we're talking about nonprofits at large, go to Monday for Nonprofits. If you are a disaster response humanitarian aid agency, go to our website to mondayert.org and check out the services and everything there. Reach out to us. And generally, if you're an NGO, I really, really encourage all NGOs to really start exploring tools out there. Nothing, it's not Monday, it's not work management per se, but just see what's out there. There are so many different options that can help you and save you time and make you more efficient and save you on resources. And I think that's really key.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing a little more about your line of work. Super fascinating. I think we both learned a lot. And thanks to everyone for listening.
Thank you, gentlemen.